Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. My name is Jeanne Brown, and I am an educator working here at NMSU at the Children's Village. I teach in a 4-year-old pre-K classroom. I have been teaching for 26 years, all in early childhood, mostly 4-year-olds. And I'm so glad that you're here today to talk about trauma-informed practices. The study of trauma got formalized in the 90s in Los Angeles when there was a huge grant from Kaiser Permanente that was working with the Los Angeles Public Health Department, and they were trying to figure out what was happening, particularly with the Black and brown communities, where they would have these crazy high heart disease rates, cancer rates, chronic illness rates, and they were trying to get to this idea of what is the source of all this health disparity in particular, and obviously there's difference in healthcare, but there's also differences just in, like, if you take a person over the lifespan, why are there so much health problems at this age among this community? And so they started doing all these sociological studies, all these questionnaires. They're trying to get to the roots, and what they figured out was that there was a huge connection between children's traumatic experiences and a lifetime of health problems. And they called those children's experiences ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. And so they came up with this whole quiz, and they made it nationwide. Now internationally, it's been backed up now by thousands of replicated studies. And it's now moved from the field of public health into education, where people are really understanding that even a small exposure to trauma as a child can really affect you over your lifespan. And so that's what this session is about really thinking through what is trauma, and then also how can we be trauma informed, and how we can create these amazing spaces that will actually be great for kids who may be currently experiencing or have experienced a trauma, and adults too, because we may have had that happen to us as well. So I'm going to actually put the quiz on the screen for you, the ACEs quiz. It's a 10-question quiz. And what researchers have found is that it's very, very common. 2/3 of Americans have experienced at least one of these, and more than 25% of us have experienced 3 or more. So take a look at these and think about yourselves and also the children you serve as you think through this ACEs quiz. So in summary, you see that the ACEs really focuses on these 3 areas: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction, and has questions to do with each. The interesting thing is, since the ACEs quiz was developed in the 90s, there's been much more of a realization that there's household level trauma, but there's also community level trauma. So there's been more of a focus on thinking through what it looks like to have to live with, for example, racism every single day of your life, or homophobia every single day of those life, that can be equally as traumatic as what's actually happening in your home. And so the idea of trauma has actually expanded. And now that we're living in coronavirus, I feel like that we have a real sense of what that's like to be constantly in trauma. So just think of what we have all gone through in the last year. And so think of things like coronavirus. The fact, I actually just got my vaccine on Saturday. I'm so excited. Woo! But I was out there exercising the next morning, and I said to myself, I'm not going to die of coronavirus. And I didn't even know I was carrying that around. But just that idea that we're carrying that with us. Domestic violence, economic problems, the racial reckoning. We have climate change, if that's not enough on top of everything else. There's just a lot to think about. And this is both for adults and kids. And if you think about it, how much of our brain is just, our subconscious is really deeply invested just in trauma, and just keeping track of managing our anxiety about that, or it could be our depression about that, and kids, and how and how oftentimes kids have even fewer resources than adults to deal with the kind of trauma that they're going through every day. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to show you a video about uh, an educator that talks a lot about how to use trauma to think through how you're going to teach. And then we're actually going to go through some actual things you can do in your classroom to make your environment warm and safe and amazing for kids who have experienced trauma. So check out Jacob Ham and his quick video about learning brain versus survival brain.
Today, I really wanted to think about what's the best way to teach teachers about trauma without getting them distracted with all the technical stuff, and what's the most important thing for them to understand and learn. And I thought that the best way to do it might be to just make a difference between a learning brain versus a brain in survival mode. So we'll just call it learning brain versus survival brain. And this is the difference. So learning brain is this brain that's open to learning new information, and it's completely okay with ambiguity and grays and vagueness, and it sees the big picture. It like pulls back and is on the balcony, can look over the forest and figure out what's going on. On an emotional level, people in learning brain feel calm, peaceful, maybe a little excited about what they're about to learn, maybe a little playful and having fun too, and definitely curious. And they're not afraid of making mistakes because it's just part of the learning process. And so they're not really thinking about themselves. And they actually feel a little bit of confidence that if they just apply themselves, they might pick up what they're trying to learn. Now, survival brain, on the other hand, is completely different. It's hyper-focused on threat. It doesn't like ambiguity. It wants clear, hard facts. It thinks in black and white terms. It doesn't want anything to be gray at all. And then emotionally, you can imagine that survival brain makes people feel panicky, feel like a little obsessive and afraid of getting things wrong. And they don't feel calm and open to learning new things. They just want to get things over with. And people in survival brain also really don't like making mistakes, and they are afraid of looking stupid too. So students in survival brain don't want to be picked on. They don't want to raise their hand and ask questions and look stupid. And so these people are also filled with doubt about their own ability to learn stuff, and they're afraid that other people can see how stupid they really are. Now, it's really important to understand how learning brain and survival brain interact, because survival brain always trumps learning brain. And it makes sense because survival brain is just trying to save your life. And so if it thinks that there's something dangerous happening, you better pay attention to it, right? But the tricky thing is that as survival brain stays on longer and longer, it's harder to get out of that. And it's harder to really go into learning brain. And the way I think about it is kind of like the myth of Sisyphus. You know, that guy who has to push a rock up a hill, and then every day it falls back down and he has to do it over and over again. Well, being in learning brain is like being up on the high parts of that mountain. You can see the expanse of what's going on, but it also takes a lot of work to be up there. And at any second, if you're not paying attention and putting effort into it, it's so easy to slip back into survival brain again. And that rock that Sisyphus is trying to push up, well, that's kind of like stress. And the more stressed you feel, the heavier and bigger that rock gets, and it just pushes you back into survival brain quicker. Now, the kicker is that for traumatized people, stress is a really rigid and intense thing. And so with trauma, any little stress makes that rock grow way bigger than it normally would. And because people with trauma misperceive ambiguous situations as threatening and stressful, that rock just stays big all the time. Now, the good news is that the more you control stress, well, the easier it is to be in learning brain, right? Because that rock is a lot smaller. And what I really want to highlight for teachers is that the best way to keep students in learning brain goes back to why I spent so much time talking about attachment. Students best learn when they feel like they're safe and supported by the adults around them. So it's kind of like a baby elephant. You know how like on those nature shows, the baby elephant is like playing with leaves or exploring a tree or something like that and having a lot of fun. And the only reason why they can do that is because there's a whole group of mama elephants around that baby protecting it and looking out for danger. So a kid with trauma or who's stuck in survival brain, it's kind of like that baby elephant who doesn't have protective adults around them. They can't play and learn because they're way too focused looking out for threat and danger. So this is why I really believe that the most important thing that schools need to focus on, way more important than any kind of techniques or curricula, is really whether or not they are creating that environment where students feel like they're surrounded by these big mama elephants who are going to protect them and watch out for them and make them safe. And when students have that, I bet you it unlocks their curiosity, their eagerness to learn, and play as a way to learn. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thanks.
All right, here's for all you mama elephants out there. I know you're doing that already, but I just think that's such a beautiful picture of how we can really create for students this sense that we've got their back, that they are safe. When they're with us, they are safe. And that is really what trauma-informed practices are all about. So now I'm going to get into some specifics of things that you can do in your classrooms to make your classrooms really feel great. So let me hop back to our PowerPoint, and I'm just going to give a lot of credit at this point to the trauma toolkit. And a lot of the graphics that I'm going to use for the rest of this presentation were taken from here, and I just totally recommend it. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the major symptoms of trauma. If you think about when this is for kids in school, so these are the things that are most likely to show up as trauma. Of course, they could show up and it could not be trauma related. It could be just biologically related, but these are also symptoms of trauma if you see this happening. And when I read through it, I'm thinking to myself, oh, these are my hard kids. Yeah. So anyway, trauma-informed environments feel great. So these are some things that you can do. So the number one most important thing to do is to be that mama elephant. So you're attentive to your body language, your tone, your choice of words. You're telegraphing all the time that you are safe, that you are to be trusted. And when that child is with you, they are safe. So you are constantly being that mama elephant for kids. And again, this is going to look different for each of us because we are different people. So maybe you're a person, that's cracking jokes and, doing fist bumps, or maybe you're the person that's very quiet and takes kids aside for one-on-one time. And so it's all going to look different. But the thing that you need to work on is just this consistency. Like every single moment, you are aware of how you are communicating that trust. And the thing is, with the trauma-informed kids, the trauma-exposed kids, you can break that trust very easily. So you might think to yourself, one day I'm going to blow up and it's not going to matter. And the thing is, it really will. I have to tell this story on myself because it really sticks with me. So this is something I really try very, very hard to do, like to be constantly positive, constantly aware. So we were on a field trip. This was, as my kids say, before COVID, we were on a field trip with my kids, and one of my kids ran out in the street. And I yelled and I was like, Jace, come back. And, and got him back and everything. And then 6 months later, we were having a conversation with the kids, and we're talking and the kids were having this conversation about who's mean or who's not mean. And one of the kids said, "You're mean." And I said, "I'm not mean." And they said, "You are. You yelled at Chase." And I'm like, that was 6 months ago and he was going to run in the street. And they go, "You yelled at him." And the thing was, I was like, wow. So I point that out to myself, how you might think to yourself, I'm trying really hard at this, but I am human. You are human. But that the kids are, they really every single moment builds that trust, and one tiny moment can knock it down. So just be really, really aware of that. So make it warm. You are the number one factor that makes the classroom feel great. The next thing is in the virtual world. What does it look like in the virtual world? Of course, we can't give hugs or high fives or fist bumps or even be silly with kids, but we can communicate with our body language and our tone that we are these trustful, amazing people. And I am such a fan of working in the smallest groups as you can possibly do with adults you have. So if you can do breakout rooms or pods, it's such a great way to do it. But you can also, if you can't, and it's just you can keep it light with Zoom tools like funny backgrounds or filters, and just even just how you use Zoom can make a big difference in keeping it really pleasant and feeling great. So trauma-informed environments teach children to identify their emotions. One of the strongest habits that I totally recommend to you is to do a check-in and check-out with kids. And one simple way, now I'm a preschool teacher, so modify this as needed. So keep that in mind. But what we do, so we take a little stuffed animal. This is Cat. And Cat loves to be hugged and protected, but Cat also scratches if you try to get into Cat's space without Cat's permission. So be careful of Cat. Anyway, so what we do in the morning is we pass Cat around and everybody does just a little check-in. We have an emotions chart, work on kids saying how they're feeling. And the amazing thing about this, and you can just go around and sometimes I've seen it done where kids just literally just give a number. How's your morning going on the scale of 1 to 5? And they'll say my morning's a 1. And they can talk about why, or they can just say it's a 1. But and it can go really quickly. This doesn't need to take a ton of time in the morning and again at the end of the afternoon. And you'll get a real picture of how kids' lives are at home. And the thing is, I have to tell you, kids can be carrying some heavy stuff. One of the things that happens when you allow this conversation to take place in your classroom is the students say, oh, it's safe to bring my home to my teacher, that my teacher cares about what happened to me at home. So you're doing yourself this huge favor by knowing what's happening with the kid at home. And you're also doing the children just this enormous favor by freeing your classroom and creating your classroom as a safe space for them to bring their whole selves, all that's going on with their family and all that's going on in their lives. So it's something that I really recommend to you. All right, let's keep talking about some more things that trauma-informed educators do. Trauma-informed educators plan for fun and laughter. Just those little jokes that you have with your kids. In my classroom, we literally have a job that's called a joke teller, that they go and they tell jokes. That's their job. They're supposed to go around and tell jokes to everybody that day. And again, if you're online, you can just be silly. I love these just goofy videos. I don't know if you know these guys, Jess and Mike. They do these harmless 2-3 minute goofy videos and just get everybody going. Or this scene right here, a bunch of the kids, they were just getting paintbrushes and they were pretending to paint us. And sometimes kids come with their Spider-Man gloves and they pretend to web us or whatever it is, and just go with it. Make it fun and goofy. And that laughter, if you think of that Sisyphus rock, that laughter just shrinks that rock to nothing. It makes it just so light to push up the hill. You're getting kids a learning brain as soon as you go silly. It's such a powerful, powerful tool. And you can just bring it out all the time. Anytime you're stressed, do it for yourself. Trauma-informed environments train students to self-regulate. So I just love this image of these children monitoring their own breathing with their stuffies on their chest. And so what we're actually going to do right now is we're going to take a minute to get in touch with our own bodies. So go ahead and put your feet on the floor. Put your feet flat on your floor. Make your shoulders relax a little bit. Notice if your eyebrows are lowered or if you can raise your eyebrows, open your hands, and just take 3 deep breaths. teachers love breathing too, huh? We forget to do it. So often we just carry that with us, and we can really work on that for ourselves and our kids when we take those breathing breaks, and then we're aware. So when the kids, like when we see those lowered eyebrows, or we feel our hands clenched, we can feel the stress within ourselves, and we can read it in others and teach children to read it for themselves, so that they can use strategies to short circuit a meltdown. So you can start by being really aware. And what a powerful tool to give to kids, the tool of awareness. So that's another important trauma-informed practice. The next trauma-informed practice I'm going to talk about is just the idea of using nature. Nature's so powerful in terms of being a counteractive to stress, whether it's books about nature or just simple experiments about nature. There's lots of ways to incorporate nature. We'll go into that more next week. I also want to talk about when outbursts happen. And again, these images are oriented towards preschool. I'm still going to just claim this image, because I think this idea is true of all of us, is that one of the things that helps us when we have completely lost it and we need to literally like almost regroup and get ourselves back together is we need a cocoon. Like if you think of yourselves, you're like, I am totally stressed. I don't know if you do this. I do. I'm totally stressed. I'm going to bed. And you just get in your bed and you like curl all up in the blanket. And how can you create almost that cocoon where a person can reform and get themselves together in your classroom? What would that look like in a middle school classroom, for example? Or what would that look like in an upper elementary classroom? In a preschool classroom, it might very well look like these little cocoons like this. So they're literally cocoons, literally places for kids to recover. So one of the things that they talk about, that researchers working with trauma talk about, is this step right here, where kids have had an outburst. So kids, and that what they call at that point, they call the outburst the student coping mechanism. So the kids have had the outburst. And it's this step right here that the trauma-informed educators change. You'll see that what happens if you're not thinking about trauma is the kid is triggered, the kid acts out, and then you're like, my kid, he's acting out again, or he cannot, whatever, you can hear this. He can't, he won't, he doesn't. So one of the things we can do when we're trauma informed is there's the acting out, and then we're like, wow. And you think about, and you might even be thinking back to your check-in. You know what? He just said that they might have to move out of their apartment tonight. Mom's working 2 jobs and he hasn't seen her for 3 days. So be thinking about at that moment where there's that acting out, where you're like, you become, rather than ready to just like be done with this, be in a position to be teaching skills, to be empathizing, and then saying, this kid is doing the best they can. They were triggered, and this is the best they can do. So what can I do to help them so that next time they're triggered, they'll have more skills and can react in a more positive way? So then you teach that triggering moment and you transform it into a skill building moment. So that's a huge part of creating a trauma-informed environment, and also a trauma-informed mindset for educators. So again, this is tons about how you are thinking about what's happening. The next thing I really want to talk about is choices. Oh, let me show you just some other, I do want to show you some other calming places. So some other ways that you can create calming places in your classroom, and we're going to see this more in the video that we're going to watch at the conclusion of my little spiel, is to create these calming places in your classroom. I talked about how you might not be able to do cocoons if you have a little older kids, but you can create peace corners or peace nooks. You can do things like think about changing up the lighting in your classroom, or adding soft places to sit or snuggle, or even adding essential oils to your classroom. And then the final thing that I just really want to talk to you about is choices. So trauma-informed environments give children authentic choices. So what happens if you're in trauma all the time, if your home is very chaotic, is that you feel like you're constantly on this roller coaster and you're just on it. Other people are driving it. You don't have any choice. You're just trying to survive. You're doing the best you can to just hang on. But when you are given the chance to actually make choices to control your own destiny, it is so powerful and so reassuring. And this is something I have to say that schools aren't good at. Schools aren't good at giving kids choices. And in some ways, this moment is a perfect opportunity to give choices, because in general, we'll be working with smaller groups of kids than we typically have. So if you have 20 kids, you know, it is harder to negotiate, like figuring out how to get everybody to have a bathroom trip or whatever. But think about the power of being able to go to the bathroom exactly when you feel like you have to go to the bathroom, or feeling like, or the power of like even a child saying to you, I don't think I can do my math test today. And you saying, okay. Like just this idea that they could make powerful, authentic choices. And the older the kids you have, the more, honestly, the more power I hope that you think that you can give them, because we're really working up to giving them the skills of adulthood at some point, and that power of making great choices. Like everything else, you have to practice making good choices in order to make good choices. And why not give kids the chance to do it in school? So I really hope that this is something you can take on. And I also want to say to all of you teachers that when you have to go to the bathroom and you can't because there's nobody there to cover your class, you got to figure that out too, because isn't that something that we have to think about? Anyway, okay, so I have just a short video that I wanted to show you about a school that has done this, that have taken their entire school and devoted it to trauma-informed practices. So let me show you this quick video about Falls something school in Nashville that has turned itself into a trauma-informed school. I want to say one thing before I do. It's connected to the bathrooms. Please work as a team. There are times when kids are going to be, you're going to get yourself in a situation where a kid has gotten you over your head. Like, there are hard kids and hard situations, and there are people in your school that are there to help. And please, please work as a team too, because trauma is hard, and kids that have been through trauma are hard. And so teamwork is such an important thing, as this video will show you. So without further ado, let me show you this little video of Falls Hamilton Elementary in Nashville, a trauma-informed school.
We understand the effects of adverse childhood experiences nationally. This is not an issue that is just isolated to my demographic at my school.
You're gonna do great, aren't you? Okay, nice work.
We understand what it does to them now and potentially in the future. We're right off of downtown Nashville, and we're in the midst of some serious transformation and gentrification. And so a lot of our students are being displaced. We have students who are currently experiencing some serious tragedy in their lives, and we know their stories, and we take a proactive approach here to make sure their needs are being met.
Doing all right today?
The old approach was, you're at school, you need to be at school and play school, and it was compliance driven. But the trauma approach is taking a completely different lens. They have to feel safe, they have to feel nurtured, and they have to feel supported. When kids walk through the door, they don't leave everything that has happened at the door. They're still developing emotionally, they're still developing cognitively, and we want to give them the ability to do that in a safe environment that is school. To be quite frank, this transformation is more about adults than it is kids.
You had a perfect day?
It's about giving the teachers the understanding and support to be able to meet the needs of the kids on a basic level.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. There was a big mind shift, for me especially. My students might have had a bad day, something happened at home, no one was home last night. You can't just be like, come in and do math now. So when they know they can trust you and they talk to you, their academics start to blossom.
One of the most transformative strategies is getting someone who is trained in understanding students' mental health needs.
I was brought in as a part of the district initiative to increase the awareness and knowledge of ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. Class been okay?
Yep.
So coming in and identifying different trauma-informed practices that we can implement here in the school.
We now have students leading other students in different activities throughout the building.
Who wants to go first?
And we value that.
Good morning, leaders. The time is 8 o'clock.
Traditionally, in most schools, you've got the iridescent lighting that burns our eyeballs like laser beams. But here we have teachers use a lot of low lighting. Some of our rooms have calming colors, utilizing color as a strategy. We also use essential oil diffusers with just understanding that your body is sensory. We utilize mindfulness as a strategy and understanding that smells and things around you are helpful. One of the approaches that we're using are peace corners.
A peace corner is like a place where you can just chill out. If I get like really frustrated and feel like I'm gonna yell, or when I feel really sad about to cry, I go to the peace corner.
It's a proactive approach. And so many times we give kids strategies, but we don't give them a time or a place to practice those strategies. We've really put a lot of effort in building positive relationships. Under that, there are strategies, and one of them is our check-in and check-out system.
Hey, Mariah.
Hi.
You ready to have another great day today?
Yep.
My check-in, check-out buddy, her name is Mariah, and she's in 4th grade. She comes to see me at the beginning and the end of every day. What are your goals for today?
Listen, be on task, and nice.
Awesome. She has 3 goals every day that she works on. She can get 0, 1, or 2 points for each of her goals.
And then at the end of the day, they know where they are.
How was your day?
Good. Actually, it was fantastic.
Fantastic. People will see a point sheet, but the most motivating piece of our check-in and check-out system is the mentor-mentee relationship.
You go to him, and then he asks about your day, and if you had a problem somewhere, we'll talk about that and see how you can fix it.
The child knows every day they come in this building that somebody's excited to see them in the morning and excited to see them right before they leave. So do you think you knocked it out of the park? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. And it's that positive in, positive out mindset.
You did it with me.
That's right. No, but you did it on your own. That's you, my man. Nice work.
That's been a huge success. Last year was a tough year. It was really tough. We didn't have the support systems fully in place that we have now. I didn't support teachers in the way that I should have and could have because I was a new principal, and I just didn't know how. But that all changed at the end of the year when we all just as a team sat down and said, we've got to do something different. Our paradigm has to shift, where we're talking about not only how to support students, but how to support yourself, self-care.
We know you can't help others until you help yourself. Sometimes this job is hard, this job is exhausting. Sometimes you just need a minute. Tap in, tap out is something that we've developed. You can text someone and be like, hey, can you cover my class? Can you give me a second? And we will gladly cover one another. You'd sometimes just need to ask for help. And it's okay. And it's really accepted here and it's promoted.
This is
Operating a trauma-informed approach is a blanketed approach for all kids.
You all have done outstanding work.
We have to be able to help them manage their experiences in productive ways.
What's your favorite on there?
It's not compliance-driven, it's a we've got your back approach.
All right. Thank you, everybody.